What's a let that sink in fun fact? It took humanity approximately 4 times longer to switch from copper swords to steel swords than it took to switch from steel swords to nuclear bombs. Imagine you're a vampire. You go to sleep in the early 1700s. Muskets and sheet. Men. You wake up in 1945. And humans have the ability to wipe an entire city off the map in an instant. Gwen Stefani is older than Ted Cruz. When NASA pitched the idea of the Voyager missions to Richard Nixon with the idea of touring the outer planets, he was told that the last time it was possible. Thomas Jefferson was in the White House. The particular planetary alignment that Voyager 2 used on its journey occurs only once every 176 years. Your bones are wet. I now feel weird. Now all I can think about is my bones slipping and sliding around under my muscles. I don't like it. Next to the US Army. Disney World is the largest buyer and importer of explosives in the USA. I was wondering what Mickey needed nukes for before I remembered fireworks exist. We are closer to the year 2040 than the year of 1994. No. If you live in the USA, you have better odds of dating Taylor Swift than dying of bird flu and Ebola combined. Don't try to scare us. Seriously. I'm not trying to hear a hit song about how boring of a boyfriend I am. In the span of the last 3 Star Wars movies, the Cleveland Browns have won 1 game. Why you gotta do my Browns like that? There was a time in history when trees existed but the fungi which causes wood to rot had not yet evolved to digest wood. Dead trees and plants would pile up and the 35% oxygen atmosphere caused massive fires. This is also the time where petrified wood came from. Trees would sit in mud for 1000s of years and not rot while minerals slowly replaced the wood structures. Full stop. The Titanic had 2 sister ships. The Britannic and the Olympic. There was a woman called Violet Jessup, a nurse and a cruise liner stewardess that worked on all 3. The Olympic crashed into a warship whilst leaving harbor but was able to make it back. She was on the Titanic as it sank and is referenced in the Titanic film. A stewardess that was told to set an example to the non-English speaking passengers as the ship sank. She looked after a baby on lifeboat 16 until being rescued by the Carpathia the next day. It's not known what exactly caused the sinking of the Britannic but the lifeboats hit the water too early. As the ship sank, the reel stood up and a number of the lifeboats were sucked into the propellers. Violet had to jump out of the lifeboat she was in and sustained a serious head injury, but survived. She was on board for all 3 incidents in the space of 5 years. She went back to continue to work at sea for another 30 years before retiring in 1950. She died of heart failure in 71. Edit. Thank you for the gold. Here's her wiki as well. The man who invented the frisbee was cremated and turned into a frisbee. Anne Frank and Martin Luther King Jr. were born in the same year. Scientists who work with cockroaches often develop allergies towards cockroaches. At the same time, they also develop allergies to pre-ground coffee. In the USA, more soldiers die from suicide than in combat. Edit. Was half asleep and misread title. The Great Pyramid was built before the last woolly mammoth died. Vending machines have killed more people than sharks. Why would vending machines go around killing sharks? You can place all the planets of our solar system between Earth and Moon and even have a bit of spare space after. 10 out of 10 scientists all agree that this is a bad idea and should not be attempted. The US federal government classifies coke as a less serious, more useful drug than marijuana. We keep coke nose sprays in the ER for uncontrollable nosebleeds. It's also very good for tooth pain for patients who for some reason cannot take opioids. When humans started farming, blue eyes in humans hadn't evolved yet. The cigarette lighter was actually invented before the match. And before the cigarette. Dozens of Americans die every day from slipping in the shower and hitting their heads. Dozens. I tell you. It's one of the primary leading causes of non-medical deaths in the USA. There is, on average, a supernova explosion every 50 years in the Milky Way. On average, there are 30 every second in the observable universe. After hitting the iceberg, it took 2 hours and 40 minutes for the Titanic to fully submerge underwater. Let that sink in. Looking at this post makes me think about the fact that it's a lot of time. But the more I think about it, the more I realize that it took people a while to realize how significant it was. And that getting off of a huge ocean liner would take so much time. The US Navy has the second largest air force in the world. The US Army has the third. In 2008 the subreddit rjailbait was voted subreddit of the year in a best of Reddit poll. Reddit sure has come a long way. Bill Clinton, George W. Bush and Donald Trump were all born within a 66-day stretch. China used more concrete in 3 years than the US used in the entire 20th century. The first electric car was invented at the end of the 19th century and it went 65 miles per hour. Because early gas engines had very low torque, some of the earliest cars were gas electric. Your computer is much more likely of contracting a virus by surfing legitimate church sites than by surfing porn sites. Porn sites generally have experts combating viral stuff, while church sites are maintained by lower tech volunteers. As a rule, the Holy Roman Empire existed until 30 years after the United States was founded, 1776-1806. The Oxford University is actually older than the Aztecs. The moon orbits us from the west to the east, but we see it move across the sky east to west because of the rate of the Earth's rotation. Our observation is like being in a faster car watching a slower car, heading in the same absolute direction, fall further and further behind us. To be in the top 1% of Americans in terms of income, you need to rake in about $400,000 a year. Round it off to $1,000 a day. The US dropped 26,172 GOMs last year, 2016. That's almost 72 per day. That's about 3 GOMs an hour. Every hour. For the entire year. In 2017, the US had already dropped more GOMs than that by September. It is unlikely that a person could actually die in quicksand, since most quicksand is only a few inches deep. The majority of the first American settlers only survived the first winter by eating their dead children. The entire continent of South America is east of Florida. As you get closer to black hole, time goes slower. This means that everything farther away would experience time faster and faster as you get closer and closer to the black hole. A second for you could be a billion years for those outside of it. Thus, if you fell into a black hole and looked outside, you would see the universe die with you. Astronomer here. I always like that the coldest place we know of in the universe is on Earth. Even a dense dust cloud. The coldest spots we know of are a few degrees above absolute zero, the coldest temperature there is, in laboratories on Earth. However, it's quite common to get a few fractions of a degree above absolute zero for experiments. Ergo, you don't remember being born nor most of the first years of your existence. All you know is one day you just started existing and taking in experience memories. Scientists haven't found out a particular brain component responsible for consciousness. There is no physical proof of consciousness. It just is. All that stuff you learn about in history class about civilizations rising up and dying out. About certain groups killing off other groups and taking over their lands. That is still happening right now. Schizophrenia's hallucinations are shaped by culture. Americans with schizophrenia tend to have more paranoid and harsher voices hallucinations. In India and Africa, people with schizophrenia tend to have more playful and positive voices. We can't prove we aren't in a simulation. The chances that we are a computer simulation is more plausible than that we are alive and living a real life. There was a period of time where 4 distinct species of human lived concurrently. All 6 of the stars of Friends negotiated 2% syndication rights for the show. Friends still makes about $1 billion yearly through reruns. Hulu etc. All 6 Friends collect a $20 million check annually. Yes. That means David Schwimmer still gets $20 million a year for doing nothing. So when you are alone in your 1BR apt, watching Friends and snickering how any of them are losers who haven't been famous since, there's a reason why. They don't have to work. Ever again. Since its discovery. In 1930. Pluto has not yet made a full orbit of the sun. It went from undiscovered to planet to not planet in less than a Pluto year. The sinking of the Titanic was a miracle to the lobsters in the galley. About 40% of the world's food is wasted. And a lot of that is before it even hits the shelves. Cows kill more Americans than terrorists. Most years. Google's DeepMind self-learning AI AlphaZero spent 4 hours learning chess. And proceeded to beat the top chess engine in the world. The particularly interesting part is that it wins by playing in a very human way. Chess engines tend to run algorithms to assess a board after a move is chosen, looking at millions of moves every second, and decide who's better based on a set of parameters, making their play very direct. AlphaZero seemed to develop a far more human play style, somehow seeing something less quantifiable that led to an advantage in a position. Over the past 200 years, numerous chess masters studied a style of play similar to AlphaZero. That means that in 4 hours, AlphaZero developed a better understanding of the game than we could over the 1000 plus years it has been studied. Probably too late for this to be seen. But if you take into account the fact that on average people sleep, or should sleep, 8 hours a day. If when you get 99 years of age, you will have only been awake for 66 years, having spent 33 years of your life sleeping. That's why I always stay up late. About 1 million people die every year from mosquito bites. That's 2,700 per day. Or 100 every hour. Think about how many must have died since you started reading this prompt. Fanta started as a Coca-Cola substitute in 1940s North Sea Germany. If the sun were scaled down to the size of a white blood cell, the Milky Way galaxy would be the size of the continental United States. The vastness of space is mind-boggling.